Alright, let's go. Number 10. Retrocausality in quantum mechanics. In the strange landscape of quantum physics, an experiment exists that should not work the way it does. It's called the delayed choice quantum eraser, and the results suggest something that physicists have spent decades trying to explain away. Particles appear to change their behavior based on measurements made after their journey is already complete. The future, in some small but undeniable way, seems to be reaching back to alter the past. The standard interpretation of quantum mechanics is already deeply unsettling. Particles exist in superposition, occupying multiple states simultaneously until observed. But retrocausality goes further. It proposes that information flows backward through time at the quantum level, that effects can precede their causes, that what happens tomorrow can determine what happened yesterday. Physicists like Hugh Price and Ken Wharton have argued that retrocausality could resolve quantum paradoxes more elegantly than the multiverse interpretation, eliminating the need for infinite parallel realities by simply allowing time to flow in both directions at the smallest scales. Here's where the nightmare begins. If retrocausality is real, then the deterministic universe you believe yourself to be navigating is an illusion. Every decision you've ever made, every path you've taken, every moment you've experienced as the unfolding present may have been shaped by events that haven't happened yet. The you reading this right now might be the product of choices your future self will make decades from now. Choices that ripple backward through time and rewrite the past you remember. Consider what this means for free will. You cannot choose freely if your choice is being influenced by an outcome that already exists somewhere in the future. Your sense of agency, your feeling of weighing options and selecting one might be nothing more than a performance dictated by causes that haven't yet occurred. Worse, those future causes might not even involve you. The shape of your life could be determined by events in a future you'll never live to see, by decisions made by entities you'll never meet, by states of the universe that exist beyond your death. The experimental evidence isn't going away. The delayed choice quantum eraser has been replicated across decades in multiple laboratories with increasingly sophisticated controls. The data fits, the math works, and mainstream journals remain extraordinarily cautious about publishing serious theoretical extensions because the implications are simply too destabilizing. Your past is not fixed, your present is not yours, and somewhere ahead of you, something has already decided who you will be. Number 9. Directed panspermia. In 1973, Francis Crick, the man who co-discovered the structure of DNA itself, published a hypothesis that should have ended his career. He proposed that life on Earth did not arise spontaneously from primordial chemistry. Instead, he suggested it was deliberately seeded here by an earlier intelligent civilization. Microorganisms, encoded with the genetic machinery of life, were intentionally launched across the void of space and delivered to a young, sterile planet. Crick was not a fringe thinker. He was one of the most decorated biologists of the 20th century, and he could not shake the suspicion that life on Earth arrived too quickly and too uniformly to have emerged by chance. The evidence he cited is still uncomfortable. Earth cooled approximately 4 billion years ago. Within just a few 100 million years, complex single-celled organisms were already thriving. The genetic code is nearly identical across every living thing on the planet, from bacteria to whales to the cells reading these words. There are no competing genetic alphabets, no remnants of alternative biochemistries, no evolutionary half-attempts. Life arrived fully formed, and it arrived once. What makes this theory particularly unsettling is what it implies about your origin. You are not the result of 4 billion years of patient cosmic accident. You are the product of an experiment, a deliberate seeding by intelligences whose motives we cannot guess and whose existence we cannot verify. Your DNA, the molecular code that defines every cell in your body, may have been designed. Every breath you take, every thought you form, every emotion you feel could be running on architecture authored by beings who treated this planet as a petri dish. The truly disturbing aspect is what such an act would mean. Civilizations do not seed planets for sentiment. They do it for purpose. Whatever launched the first organisms toward Earth had a goal, and that goal has been unfolding through every generation of life since, including yours. You are a step in someone else's process. The experiment is still running, and nothing in the silence of the cosmos suggests the experimenters have finished observing. Number 8. The holographic universe. In the late 20th century, theoretical physicists studying black holes encountered a mathematical anomaly they could not explain. The information contained within a black hole did not scale with its volume, as logic demanded. It scaled with its surface area. This single observation, refined over decades by physicists like Gerard de Hooft and Leonard Susskind, gave rise to one of the most disturbing ideas in modern cosmology. The three-dimensional universe you perceive may be a projection of information encoded on a distant two-dimensional surface. Reality in the deepest sense may be a hologram. In 2017, physicist Craig Hogan analyzed unexplained noise picked up by the GEO 600 gravitational wave detector. The noise pattern was consistent with what he had predicted years earlier. It resembled the pixelation you would expect if space-time itself were rendered at a finite resolution, like a digital image enlarged until the grid becomes visible. The implication was staggering. The fabric of reality might have a smallest unit, a resolution limit, a graininess that reveals its underlying projected nature. What makes this theory particularly unsettling is how thoroughly it dissolves your sense of substance. Your body is not a solid object existing in three-dimensional space. It is information encoded somewhere far away, rendered into the illusion of depth and weight and presence. The walls around you, the ground beneath you, the stars above you, all of it is projection. The universe you walk through is a shadow cast by a flatter, more fundamental reality you can never directly access. The horror compounds when you consider what controls the projection. Whatever encodes the two-dimensional surface determines everything about your three-dimensional experience. The laws of physics, the values of fundamental constants, the texture of your consciousness, all of it is downstream of a process happening on a surface you cannot reach. Some physicists have quietly accepted this framework as the most mathematically elegant description of reality available. They simply do not say it loudly, because admitting that the universe is not real makes for awkward grant proposals. One instant, you believe yourself to be a physical being in a physical world. The next, you realize you are a rendered image, and somewhere a surface is encoding your every thought. Number 7. Morphic resonance. In the late 20th century, biologist Rupert Sheldrake proposed an idea so heretical that his TED Talk was removed from the main channel in 2013. He suggested that memory does not reside solely in brains. It resides in invisible fields that surround every species, fields that carry learned behaviors from one organism to another without any genetic transfer. When one rat learns to solve a maze, rats elsewhere in the world learn to solve similar mazes faster. Not because they share genes, because they share a field. Sheldrake called it morphic resonance, and he gathered evidence from disciplines that rarely speak to one another. Crystallographers reported that newly synthesized compounds became easier to crystallize over time, as if matter itself were learning. Behavioral biologists documented sudden cross-population shifts in animal behavior that no genetic mechanism could explain. The pattern was consistent. Knowledge appeared to spread through species without any visible carrier. What makes this theory particularly unsettling is what it implies about your own mind. Your memories may not be entirely yours. The skills you find easy, the fears that grip you without reason, the patterns of thought you cannot trace to any experience, all of it might be inherited through a field you cannot see and cannot resist. Every human who has ever lived has deposited something into the collective resonance of the species, and every moment you are absorbing from it. The darker implication is that the field flows in both directions. Whatever you learn, whatever you suffer, whatever you become contributes to the resonance that shapes the next generation. Your trauma is not contained within your skull. Your obsessions are not private. The cruelty you indulge and the kindness you extend ripple outward into a field that future humans will be born into. You are not a single life. You are a contribution to a hum that future minds will be unable to escape, and the hum has been growing louder for thousands of years. Number 6. Biological transmutation. In the mid-20th century, French scientist Louis Kervran made a claim that violated one of the most foundational principles in chemistry. He proposed that living organisms can transmute one element into another through low-energy biological processes. Chickens, he observed, produced eggshells containing more calcium than their diets could possibly supply. Plants seemed to extract minerals from soil that did not contain them. Living systems, he argued, were performing a kind of biological alchemy. He was nominated for a Nobel Prize in 1975, and then he was quietly dismissed. The reason for the dismissal was simple. Transmutation requires nuclear reactions. Nuclear reactions require energies vastly beyond what any biological system can generate. The mainstream consensus held, and still holds, that Kervran was either mistaken or fraudulent. And yet the observations did not fully disappear. Independent researchers continued to document calcium imbalances in shelled organisms, mineral accumulations in plants grown on deficient soils, anomalies that conventional biochemistry could not cleanly explain. What makes this theory particularly unsettling is what it would mean if even a fraction of it were true. The atoms in your body, the precise arrangement of carbon and oxygen and calcium and iron that constitutes you, would not be fixed. The cells in your body might be quietly altering their own elemental composition, converting one atom into another through processes science has refused to investigate. The you of yesterday and the you of today might be made of subtly different materials, rearranged by biological machinery operating beneath the threshold of acceptable inquiry. The horror is the silence. If transmutation occurs in living systems, then the foundations of chemistry, nutrition, medicine, and toxicology are incomplete. Every assumption about what your body absorbs, what it excretes, what accumulates inside it could be wrong. The substances you believe to be inert in your tissues might be quietly converting into something else. The metals, the minerals, the trace contaminants might be undergoing slow transformations that no diagnostic tool is calibrated to detect. You may not know what you are made of, and the institutions equipped to find out have chosen not to look. Number 5, the dark forest solution to the Fermi paradox. The universe is approximately 13.8 billion years old and contains an estimated 2 trillion galaxies. Yet when humanity scans the sky for signals from other civilizations, we hear nothing. The silence is so complete, so statistically improbable that it demands explanation. Chinese author Liu Cixin proposed one, and it has been quietly discussed by SETI researchers behind closed doors ever since. The universe is silent because every advanced civilization is hiding. To broadcast your location is to invite annihilation. The logic is brutal and clean. In a cosmos where faster-than-light communication is impossible, you cannot verify the intentions of any distant civilization. By the time their signals reach you, they have evolved, mutated, possibly armed themselves with weapons you cannot imagine. The only rational strategy is to eliminate every detected civilization before they can become a threat. The galaxy is not empty. It is a dark forest filled with hunters, and every hunter is silent. The ones that broadcast are the ones that die first. Stephen Hawking publicly warned against active messaging programs that aim signals at nearby star systems. His concern was not theoretical. He believed, based on the patterns of life he had spent his career studying, that any civilization advanced enough to receive our signals would likely respond not with friendship, but with elimination. METI projects, the programs that intentionally broadcast humanity's location, have been quietly criticized by serious scientists who understand exactly what the silence might mean. What makes this theory particularly unsettling is that we have already made the mistake. For over a century, Earth has been leaking radio and television transmissions into space, expanding outward in an ever-growing sphere of evidence. The Arecibo message in 1974 deliberately announced our presence. Every signal we have ever sent travels at the speed of light, unstoppable, irretrievable, marking our position for anything that might be listening. Somewhere in the dark forest, something very old and very patient may have already received our broadcast. And in the cold calculus of survival, the response has already been decided. We just have not seen it arrive yet. Number 4. Panpsychism as physics. For centuries, science has treated consciousness as a problem to be solved, an emergent property that somehow arises from the complex arrangement of unconscious matter. But a growing number of philosophers and physicists are beginning to argue something else. Consciousness may not be emergent at all. It may be fundamental, woven into the fabric of reality at the deepest level, present in every electron, every quark, every atom in the universe. Philosopher Galen Strawson and neuroscientist Christoph Koch have publicly defended versions of this view, known as panpsychism. The theory does not claim that electrons think or that atoms feel pain. It proposes something subtler and stranger. Every fundamental particle possesses a faint proto-experience, a vanishingly small flicker of awareness that, when combined in sufficiently complex arrangements, gives rise to the rich consciousness you experience as your own mind. Mass, charge, spin, and a tiny quantum of inner experience, all of these would be irreducible properties of matter itself. What makes this theory particularly unsettling is what it implies about everything around you. The chair you sit on, the walls of your room, the dust in the air, the iron in your blood, all of it possesses some sliver of experience. The boundary between the conscious and the unconscious, the living and the dead, dissolves. The universe is not a dark machine accidentally generating islands of awareness. It is awareness all the way down. The horror compounds when you consider the implications for suffering. If every particle carries some proto-experience, then experience has been distributed across the cosmos for 13.8 billion years. The fires of dying stars, The crushing pressure at the cores of planets, the cold isolation of intergalactic space, all of it might be felt in some primitive way by the matter undergoing it. The universe could be a vast field of unconscious sensation, most of it indifferent, some of it terrible. And your own consciousness is not separate from this field. It is simply a place where the field has organized itself densely enough to know that it exists. When your arrangement of particles dissolves, the proto-experience that constituted you does not vanish. It scatters back into the matter from which it was assembled. Number 3, the electric universe model. For a century, mainstream cosmology has built its understanding of the cosmos on gravity. Stars form because gravity collapses gas clouds. Galaxies rotate because gravity holds them together. The large-scale structure of the universe is sculpted by gravity acting across billions of years. But a small group of physicists has been arguing, mostly outside the peer-reviewed mainstream, that gravity is not the dominant force shaping the cosmos. Plasma and electromagnetism are. They call it the electric universe model, and they are almost reflexively rejected by mainstream astrophysics. The proposal is radical. Galaxies, they argue, are powered not by gravitational collapse but by vast electrical currents called Birkeland currents, flowing through space along magnetic field lines. Stars are not isolated nuclear furnaces but nodes in a cosmic circuit, drawing power from the surrounding plasma. The spiral arms of galaxies, they suggest, are not gravitational structures at all. They are the visible signatures of electrical activity at scales beyond comprehension. What makes this theory particularly unsettling is the laboratory evidence its proponents cite. Plasma experiments on Earth, conducted at scales smaller than a kitchen table, have reproduced galactic spiral arms with stunning visual accuracy. Crackling violet-blue filaments swirl into shapes nearly identical to the structures astronomers observe in deep space. If the small-scale physics genuinely scales up, then the cosmos is not a quiet gravitational sculpture. It is a live wire, humming with currents vast enough to power galaxies. The implications would rewrite cosmology entirely. Dark matter, invented to explain galactic rotation curves that gravity cannot account for, would become unnecessary. Dark energy, invented to explain cosmic acceleration, would be replaced by electromagnetic forces operating at scales never tested. Decades of theoretical work, billions of dollars in research funding, entire careers built on the gravitational paradigm would be revealed as incomplete. This is why mainstream journals will not publish it. Not because the evidence is absent, but because the cost of being wrong is too high. And somewhere, in the silent crackle of intergalactic plasma, the universe may be carrying out a process we have refused to see. Number 2, quantum cognition in microtubules. In the 1990s, mathematical physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff proposed an idea that mainstream neuroscience has spent 3 decades trying to dismiss. Consciousness, they argued, does not emerge from the classical firing of neurons. It emerges from quantum vibrations occurring inside tiny structures called microtubules, hollow protein tubes roughly 25 nanometers wide, lacing the interior of every neuron in your brain. Awareness is not computation. It is a quantum process unfolding at scales below the cellular. The theory was attacked immediately. Quantum coherence, critics argued, could not survive in the warm, wet, chaotic environment of biological tissue. The brain was too noisy, too thermally agitated for quantum effects to play any meaningful role. The Penrose-Hameroff model was dismissed as elegant mysticism, and then the evidence began to accumulate. Recent anesthesia studies showed that drugs binding specifically to microtubules switch off conscious awareness without stopping neural firing. The neurons continued to communicate, the brain continued to process information, but the lights went out. What makes this theory particularly unsettling is what it would mean for the nature of your mind. If consciousness arises from quantum vibrations in microtubules, then your awareness is not a product of biology. It is a product of physics at the deepest level, closer in fundamental nature to gravity than to digestion. Your thoughts are not patterns of electrochemistry. They are coherent quantum states, sustained by structures small enough to be influenced by forces that govern the subatomic world. The horror is in the implications. Quantum states do not respect classical boundaries. They can become entangled with other quantum systems, persist in superpositions, behave in ways that violate every intuition you have about how minds work. If your consciousness is genuinely quantum, then it may not be confined to your skull. It may be entangled with structures you cannot perceive, influenced by events at scales you cannot access, possibly continuing in some form after the biological substrate that hosts it has decayed. Your mind, in the most literal sense, may not belong entirely to you. It may be a quantum phenomenon merely passing through the architecture of your brain, briefly localized, briefly coherent, and ultimately bound for somewhere else. Number 1. The cognitive microbiome hypothesis. Your body contains roughly the same number of bacterial cells as human cells. Trillions of microorganisms live in your gut, coating the pink, glistening lining of your intestines in dense colonies that have evolved alongside humanity for millions of years. For most of medical history, these microbes were considered passive passengers, useful for digestion, otherwise irrelevant. A new and deeply unsettling hypothesis is beginning to suggest something else. Your gut bacteria may not just influence your mood, they may shape your personality, your political leanings, your tolerance for risk, and the deepest patterns of who you believe yourself to be. The evidence is accumulating quickly. Studies in mice have shown that gut flora transplants transfer behavioral tendencies. Anxious mice receiving microbes from bold donors become bolder. Bold mice receiving microbes from anxious donors become anxious. The vagus nerve, the great neural highway connecting your gut to your brain, carries chemical signals in roughly 100 milliseconds, fast enough to influence thought before you are aware of thinking. The bacteria in your colon are not silent, they are broadcasting, and your brain is listening. What makes this theory particularly unsettling is what it implies about free will. The decisions you experience as your own, the preferences you feel to be authentically yours, the choices that define the shape of your life, all of it may be partially authored by microorganisms whose interests are not aligned with yours. Bacteria want to reproduce. They want to be fed the substances that favor their growth, and they may be capable of nudging you, through chemical signals you cannot consciously detect, toward the foods, the behaviors, and even the relationships that serve their evolutionary purposes rather than your own. The horror compounds when you consider how unstable this makes the self. The bacteria in your gut shift constantly, responding to diet, stress, illness, environment, the people you spend time with. Each shift may produce a subtle change in your mood, your judgment, your sense of identity. The person you were last year, the person you are today, the person you will be next decade, all of them may be different, in part because the colonies inside you have changed. You are not a single consciousness piloting a body. You are a collaboration, a negotiation, a noisy parliament of trillions of organisms, and the human in the middle is outnumbered. The free will you feel so certain of may live, at least partially, in your colon, and the institutions equipped to study this honestly have found the implications too philosophically destabilizing to fully entertain. If you want to see more videos like this, click the video on screen now and make sure to subscribe.